Here.
Lou, Leno, McGuire, Monning,
Here.
Stone.
Senator Bell, are you prepared to, are you going to start off with SB 11? Thank you. And we have a quorum. So give us your A game.
Mr. Chairman and members, I'm presenting two bills that are very similar. One is SB 11, and I'll start with that one. The bills deal with behavioral health training for police officers. First, I'd like to thank the committee and its staff for all their hard work on this important legislation. I'm accepting as amendments as reflected in the updated committee analysis. So I accept those amendments as part of this bill. SB 11 is accepting the fact that it's a growing recognition throughout our law enforcement of the value of behavioral health training for police officers. This responds to growing public concerns by mandating stronger evidence-based behavioral health training that is proven to reduce volatile confrontations between police officers and people with mental illness or intellectual disabilities. Equally important, it recognizes California's diversity and requires training to be culturally appropriate. The California Peace Officer Standard and Training Curriculum mandates 664 hours of training, and that includes 72 hours on how to handle a firearm and pepper spray, 40 hours of fitness, 40 hours of driving, but just 6 hours of mental health and intellectual disability training. And there are no mandates that require mental health training for continuing education. Now, the lack of training has had deadly results. The Attorney General does not keep statistics on the number of shootings involving those with mental illness. But the individual survey conducted an estimate nearly half of all police shootings involve people with a mental illness. In my district alone, we have 2 deadly shootings in less than a year. A 19-year-old mentally ill woman in August, and a 25-year-old man just a couple of months ago. 2 weeks ago, we had a police officer attacked and murdered by a mentally ill person. The current level of training is inadequate. SB 11 mandates 20 hours of additional training in the academy and 4 hours of continuing education every 4 years. SB 11 reduces deadly interactions between police and people suffering from a mental illness or intellectual disability and increases officer safety. I request an aye vote and turn it over to my witnesses, Mr. Chairman.
Witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman, members, Ryan Sherman on behalf of LA County professional peace officers, Long Beach and Santa Ana police officers, Sacramento deputy sheriffs, and California Fraternal Order of Police. We're all in support of this bill due to mostly officer contacts with mentally ill have increased dramatically over the years, and we think any help that we can get as far as increased training would be beneficial, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Khalif Osterguy on behalf of the California Public Defenders Association. We are in strong support of this measure. A large number of the people that we represent are living with some type of mental illness. And with this increased training, we expect to improve the interactions between people living with mental illness and the police. For our clients, what this means is having an experience with an officer who is able to understand their illness and de-escalate the situation rather than engaging them in a way that might increase their level of fear and discomfort and result in a physical interaction or altercation between the members, between the people living with mental illness and the police. We expect that with this training and with this increased awareness about mental illness, that the charging decisions will be reduced for our clients and people will be safer all around in their interactions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, Tom Renfrey with the County Behavioral Health Directors Association of California. We're in support of this good legislation. Thank you.
John Lovell on behalf of the Los Angeles Police Protective League, the Riverside Sheriff's Association, the Association for Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs, the California College and University Police Chiefs Association, and the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers. This is one of those quintessential good sense bills. We are faced with an increasing number of interactions with people who are mentally ill. This is a fundamental officer safety bill, and we are in strong support of the bill. I want to make one parenthetical comment, though, because I noticed that at this moment there is a quorum of budget sub 5. The other piece that I would emphasize is that we strongly believe that we need to provide more resources to post, which are currently, frankly, inadequate. And I think I speak for the entire law enforcement community when I make that statement. And we now have a full cohort of the sub-5 membership, so I would encourage you to pass those remarks along. And congratulations, Madam Chair, on your impending award from Fight Crime, Invest in Kids.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry I'm late, but I'm glad we have a full array of people here because these are important bills. We have more witnesses in support of the bill.
Karen Kurosaki, Madam Chairperson, from the California Institute for Behavioral Health Solutions, and we're here to speak on behalf of the bill as well, to share some of the relevant findings from a survey that we conducted last year that was statewide to examine what are the practices related to CIT around the state. And what we did find was that a little under half of the counties are doing some form of CIT training, and others who are not doing CIT may be doing some form of behavioral health training, maybe some mobile crisis teams for law enforcement or first responders. But most don't have any requirement within the county related to CIT training. About half have some type of selection process for which officers are trained, and others don't have any process for that at all. There are only about 6 counties that are offering more than 5 trainings a year, and about 10 offering 1 to 5, and then others are offering fewer than 1 a year and kind of at random times. 13 are offering 4 to 5 days of training following that Memphis model, which is really the gold standard. It's evidence-based. And most others are offering maybe up to about 2 days, and some as little as 4 hours. I think, and some are requiring it during academy. Majority are offering it after some field time. And I think really what the summary is of those relevant findings are that there's a lot of variation in the way that it's being implemented, and to establish a better training base, and to have better defined levels of training and recognizing the Memphis model as the gold standard. I think that that's what the survey strongly indicates.
Thank you very much.
Greg DeShare, representing the ARC and United Cerebral Palsy California collaboration. For people with intellectual disabilities, particularly those with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, which is an epidemic in California, roughly equal to autism, this is a big issue for officer safety and, of course, for victim and witness safety. For people with other kinds of intellectual disabilities, there's probably no more issue of officer safety than there is with the general population, but there is a big issue with, again, victim safety and witness safety, and we certainly support the bill.
Thank you.
Brandon Tartaglia with Disability Rights California. We support SB 11 as well. Thank you.
Rebecca Gonzalez, National Association of Social Workers, California chapter, in strong support.
Daniel Savino, Association of Regional Center Agencies, also in support.
Kim Rutledge with United Domestic Workers, AFSCME Local 3930, and we also are in support.
On behalf of the Steinberg Institute, I'm Maggie Merritt, and we're in strong support.
Chauncey Smith, ACLU of California, strongly in support of SB 11.
Stuart Thomas on behalf of the California Medical Association, in strong support.
Thank you. Others in support of the bill? Are there speakers in opposition to the bill? Please come forward.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Corey Salzillo on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association, unfortunately here in opposition to the bill this morning. First, we would acknowledge the importance of appropriate law enforcement training, and certainly we recognize the increased import of addressing interactions between law enforcement and persons with mental health issues. California peace officer training is rigorous and comprehensive, as the author noted, and it produces some of the best trained officers in the nation. And frankly, proper training prepares officers for the daily dangers of their jobs. It builds trust with community members and provides appropriate standards for peace officer behavior. The current requirements for training include academy instruction, as well as a test and a scenario-based examination. And it is one of the parts of post-training for the basic academy that if a prospective candidate does not succeed, he or she cannot proceed through the training. And so it's deemed to be a higher level of import. You have 2 chances to pass that training, and then that's it. Unfortunately, the concern we have is that the time-based requirement without a clear identification of the issues that need to be addressed may not be helpful. So just say we need more training, we need 20 hours of training. It's not based on anything necessarily in particular other than what an analysis of what we do and don't do and what other states might do. Post, in conjunction with law enforcement, is in the process of examining the mental health training that's available in California, both at the academy level and continuing level with the agencies that offer. There are 37 or 38 approved mental health training courses, predominantly in CIT, that go up to 40 hours that agencies provide for their staff and for staffs of other departments. Unfortunately, this is a premature, unfunded mandate that provides no guarantee of providing the appropriate training to the right officers. So respectfully, we're happy to work with the authors as the process moves forward, but at this time we think the bill is premature and must be in opposition.
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, don't worry. Others in opposition?
Ignacio Hernandez on behalf of the California Attorneys for Criminal Justice, who actually supported the bill. I apologize for being late.
I know the feeling. Others in opposition? Seeing and hearing none, I think Senator Anderson had a question.
I do. When I went through this bill, I looked at it. I know that in the communities I represent, we have an issue with this. We've had some horrible outcomes because people weren't clearly identified with having issues, weren't responsive in the way that the officer was anticipating, and it resulted in a problem. On the flip side, we have the deputy sheriffs in San Diego County starting a database where if you know that you have somebody in your family that has some issues, you can go and explain and put into the computer so when they approach that person, they know how best to approach them so that it doesn't become an alarm. What I liked about this bill is the very thing that you spoke against it. I like the flexibility that every community is different. Some are further along than others, and that this would give them the flexibility to choose how to best meet the need in their community. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what is it that you believe that needs to be prescribed, or do you believe that there isn't an issue in some of the communities? I mean, I want to better understand your position.
Sure, and I don't think, through the chair, I don't think I would argue that there's no need for more training. That's not what we're saying. We're saying this bill represents one approach to address a perceived need for more training, which may or may not exist, and it's one approach. But it's not based on what the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training has determined is a deficiency. And so we entrust in post that role, that responsibility to say, here are the best practices, here's what we need to test on, here's how to use that 664 hours of academy time to produce the most appropriately trained officers. And so I would respectfully argue back that saying you have to have 20 more hours of training on mental health and 4 more hours of continuing education through CPT on mental health does not increase flexibility. Rather, it decreases flexibility because now you must offer those things, or you must have that training, and that's going to take the place of something else. That it may or may not be more important then, but again, it says, here are those 4 hours. In a county or a city that has limited resources to say, okay, we can provide X amount of training. If mental health training has to be 4 of those hours, then you do limit what makes up that training.
Thank you. Senator, I have a quick question for you. If they came back with some suggestions of amendments before the process is over, would you be open to looking at how best to address the need? I know that you and I have talked about this bill and talked about other bills as far as addressing the needs of the community. Would you be open to potentially amending it down the road?
For what purpose, though?
Well, if they came up with something that made sense on how best to address it, that's perhaps a little more prescribed than having it open.
We can work with sheriffs on the bill. I'd like to point out something, though. This didn't come out of the air, okay? It's based on the Memphis model. Right now, Maine, Connecticut, Ohio, Georgia, Florida, Utah, and Kentucky are implementing statewide standards. And right now, such cities as Albuquerque, Chicago, Madison, Wisconsin, Connecticut, Memphis, Tennessee, of course, which is the first city, San Antonio, Texas, St. Louis, Missouri, Virginia Beach, and Toronto, Canada, have all started and implemented these kinds of programs where we're trying, and the number of hours that we put in here is based on evidence-based practices that experts have determined what would be the number of hours needed to properly train the people that work in law enforcement in their community. So they kind of, this is not a new subject. It just didn't come out of the air. This is based on evidence-based practices that have been studied ever since Memphis started this, like 20 years ago, I think it was. So that's kind of where it came from.
Right.
And so like when we look at the number of hours, it's sort of based on, we can work with them on the number of hours if that's what they're concerned. I'm kind of confused about what their issues are. So I'll continue to talk to them to try to understand.
If I could.
Well, Senator, if I'm not a co-author on the bill, I'd like to be added as a co-author, and I'm prepared to move the bill when the chair is ready.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator Anderson. I was, as my staff and your staff discussed, I'd be happy to be added as a co-author too, Senator Bell. And I appreciate your taking the amendments, which do add some flexibility. They say at least 20 hours, but I'm sure that if you sit down with the sheriffs and the police chiefs and come to the conclusion that at least 18 would be better or something like that, that gets accommodated. As we know, these are always works in progress, and how they get implemented can make a lot of difference. Okay, Senator Leno and then Senator Monning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Bell, clearly you've approached this in a very thoughtful fashion, represented by the broad range of support that you had here today. And I would like to join my colleagues in being added as a co-author.
Senator Monning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe I've already indicated my interest in being added as a co-author. I did want to just underscore the importance, obviously, a range of witnesses and support show the spectrum of support for this. The communities I represent have been plagued for years with bad outcomes involving engagement between law enforcement and mentally ill suspects. And the evidence shows that where training has happened, there are better outcomes. Not always the first priority of law enforcement is to protect the safety of the public and of themselves. But within those important priorities, there is the ability to de-escalate situations, and often by bringing people in who have behavioral health training, who may be familiar with the suspect, who may not be in uniform. And often, I think, we have headlines that show the bad outcomes, but we don't have a good system of calculating or presenting data on the good outcomes. And it would be my hope that with an increase in training, we also learn how to better capture those best practices that do result in de-escalated situations. And you made reference to Officer Michael Johnson, the San Jose police officer. Senator Bell and I were both at memorial services for him. He was the victim of a mentally ill suspect who had a rifle that wasn't known when he approached that house, thinking it was a domestic violence and a possible suicide call. So these protections go to better protection for communities, for the mentally ill, as well as for officers. So appreciate your leadership on this and glad to be a co-author. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if there are, Senator Stone,
Thank you, Senator.
and followed by Senator
Hancock.
Lewis.
Senator Bell, I want to just applaud you for your advocation for those that have mental illness. And I think this bill goes a long way to helping protect many of those that law enforcement engages, especially in my county where there have been some unfortunate outcomes. And I think that with better training, recognition that people with psychosis are very unique. And hopefully through the passage and hopefully the signing of these bills, we will prevent the unnecessary loss of life to some of these sick individuals. I would be honored to be a co-author as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Liu.
Not to be left off the boat, but just the analysis on page 12, it indicates the post is in the process of examining mental health training courses, et cetera. You're in the process, or they are in the process. Is there results going to happen soon? Is there going to be a report that might be helpful to this discussion?
Through the chair, ma'am.
Yeah.
My understanding of post-process is that they are examining, they're about to wrap up. They're going to have recommendations. I don't mean to speak for post, but this is my just observation of the process, that they plan to put something before the commission board, the post commissioners, sometime in June. So that's, again, my understanding of when I spoke with them last week about what they're doing.
Then, you know, it seems to me that this is a process too. I mean, this bill will
That's right. This
eventually
bill will be moving
along. Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Senator Bell, I would be pleased to join you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, you know, I think that we all appreciate very much the contributions that Post has made to our training. But I think just the testimony across the board today and the many organizations in favor of this bill, the fact that other states are now looking at the, is it the Missouri, the Memphis model?
A whole long list of
Indicates that, you know, the results have not been as good as we might have hoped. And the situation across the country that was triggered by Ferguson has shown that we really do need to maybe be looking at different ways of doing law enforcement that make it possible for the community and our law enforcement service officers to be partners and really understand the complexity of the modern day problems that our peace officers face every single day on the street. So I think this bill is a great step forward to ensure that we have the absolutely best evidence-based training and that we have an adequate time for that training. Because in the post and C-post classes that I've reviewed, or the curriculum, the amount of time for these kinds of activities has typically been very short. And so I think that we're starting on a path that will be helpful both to law enforcement and to every community in California. And thank you for bringing it forward, Senator Bell, and would you like to close?
Rich and I both, thank you.
Thank you. And the motion is do pass as amended to appropriations. Please read the roll.
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Anderson. Aye. Anderson, aye. Leno. Aye. Leno, aye. Lou. Lou, aye. McGuire. Monning.
Aye.
Monning, aye. Stone.
Aye.
Stone, aye.
6-0, that bill has enough votes to pass. We'll hold the roll open for Senator McGuire.